The conference room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of a massive holographic display that hovered above the long, sleek table. Oceans rippled in vivid blue, their outlines flickering with data points, depths, currents, thermal gradients. Elon Musk stood at the head of the room, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the shifting projections as if they held the answer to some question only he had dared to ask. Behind him, a group of engineers and executives sat in silence, their faces a mix of intrigue and uncertainty. The room hummed faintly with the energy of devices in sleep mode, as if even the technology understood this was a moment meant for reverence. 80%, Elon began, his voice quiet but carrying, of Earth's oceans remain unexplored. Think about that. We've mapped Mars in more detail than we've mapped the ocean floor. He turned to face the group, his expression calm but intense, his eyes sharp as a hawk's. It's unacceptable. He tapped a button on the table, and the hologram shifted. A sleek, white submarine appeared, spinning slowly in the air. Its design was unmistakably Tesla, smooth, elegant lines with a faint metallic sheen that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. This, he said, gesturing to the image, is Poseidon-1. Fully electric. Autonomous navigation. Built to withstand pressures greater than any human has ever attempted to endure. This is how we're going to conquer the ocean. A murmur rippled through the room, followed by silence. Finally, Baron, Elon's lead engineer and one of the few people who dared to challenge him, cleared his throat. It's ambitious, he said carefully. But, the battery limitations. 5 minutes at full capacity, and it'll need to resurface. That's. I know, Elon cut in, his voice sharper now. 5 minutes isn't much. But how long were the Wright brothers in the air? 12 seconds. They changed the world. So will we. Baron nodded, though his expression remained cautious. Another engineer raised her hand. The ocean isn't like the sky, though. It's hostile. Unpredictable. If the battery fails at depth. It won't, Elon interrupted, walking slowly around the table. And if it does, we'll fix it. That's what we do here. He paused, looking each person in the eye. I'm not interested in excuses. I'm interested in solutions. The room fell silent again, the weight of his words pressing down like the ocean itself. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the hologram. Elon turned back to the projection, watching as Poseidon-1 spun silently in the air. The ocean is the last frontier on Earth, he said, more to himself than anyone else. It's time we explored it. Time we understood it. Because if we don't, we'll never really understand this planet, or ourselves. He tapped the table again, and the display vanished, plunging the room into near darkness. We start testing next week, he said, striding toward the door. Be ready. As the door slid shut behind him, the room buzzed to life with murmurs and hurried conversations. But Baron remained seated, staring at the spot where the hologram had been, his brow furrowed. 5 minutes, he thought. Just 5 minutes. It wasn't much time. But maybe, just maybe, it would be enough to change everything. The sky above the Pacific was a soft gradient of morning light, the ocean stretching endlessly in every direction. The Poseidon-1 gleamed on the deck of the test ship, its pristine white surface reflecting the early sun. Engineers in bright safety vests swarmed around it, running last-minute diagnostics, their voices blending with the hiss of pressurized equipment and the rhythmic slap of waves against the hull. Elon stood near the edge of the deck, hands tucked into his pockets, watching as the sub was lowered by a crane into the water. Baron stood beside him, clipboard in hand, his expression unreadable. Think it'll hold? Elon asked, his tone light but his gaze unwavering. Baron hesitated. We've triple-checked everything. Structurally, it's solid. But the battery, he trailed off. 5 minutes, Elon said, finishing the thought. He didn't look at Baron, his eyes fixed on the sub as it settled into the water. It'll be enough for now. Progress isn't perfect, it's iterative. The crane released, and Poseidon-1 bobbed for a moment before its thrusters hummed to life, sending it gliding beneath the waves. The onboard monitors lit up on the ship's control screens, showing live feeds from the sub's cameras. The water grew darker as it descended, shafts of sunlight cutting through the blue until even that faded. The room inside the ship buzzed with excitement as the engineers marveled at the clarity of the feed and the sub's smooth navigation. Then, the timer began to tick, 5:00. 4:59. Elon leaned forward, his knuckles whitening against the edge of the console. The sub glided past rocky outcroppings, schools of fish scattering in its wake. The battery indicator, a bright red bar in the corner of the screen, dipped slightly. 3 minutes, Baron said under his breath. The sub approached a steep underwater ridge, its lights cutting through the growing darkness. Strange shapes loomed in the distance, corals and sponges the likes of which no one had seen before. The feed crackled for a moment, then cleared. Battery at 40%, an engineer called out. Start the ascent, Baron ordered, glancing at Elon, who nodded. The sub hesitated, its automated systems processing the command, before turning and beginning its slow climb. The battery warning chimed, a sharp, insistent tone that cut through the tense silence. As the timer hit 0:58, the feed showed the surface growing brighter. The team exhaled as Poseidon-1 broke through the waves, its white hull gleaming once more in the sunlight. 5 minutes, Baron said again, quieter this time. Barely. Elon didn't respond immediately, his eyes locked on the sub being hoisted back onto the deck. It's a start, he said finally, his voice firm but distant. Let's make it better. The headlines were relentless. Tesla goes underwater, Elon Musk's boldest, and most bizarre, project yet. 5 minutes to nowhere, critics question Tesla submarine's viability. Conqueror of space, out of his depth. Elon scrolled through the articles in his office, the glow of his phone casting sharp shadows on his face. The world was watching, as it always did, but this time the tone felt different. Skeptical. Mocking. You knew this would happen, Baron said, leaning against the doorframe. He held a cup of coffee in one hand, his usual clipboard in the other. Elon tossed the phone onto his desk, leaning back in his chair. I didn't build SpaceX by worrying about what people think. No, Baron said, stepping inside, but you also didn't have deadlines like this. 5 minutes it's not much to show for it. It's not about the time, Elon replied, sitting forward now. It's about the proof of concept. People forget that. Baron sighed, setting his clipboard down. People also forget that you're human. You can't always. I know what I'm doing, Elon interrupted, his tone sharp enough to cut. For a moment, they sat in silence, the tension thick between them. Then Baron's expression softened. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You've already built enough legacy for 10 lifetimes. It's not about legacy, Elon said quietly. It's about curiosity. About knowing what's out there. Baron nodded, though his face betrayed his doubt. We need more than curiosity. We need a plan. Elon didn't respond, his eyes drifting back to the model of Poseidon-1 on the desk in front of him. The room fell silent again, the only sound the faint hum of machinery in the distance. The lab buzzed with energy as engineers crowded around a table covered in blueprints, tablets, and half-finished models of Poseidon-1. Elon stood at the center, sleeves rolled up, pointing at a schematic on the wall. The battery is the bottleneck, he said, tapping the diagram. We need something lighter, more efficient. A completely new approach. That's easier said than done, one of the engineers muttered, earning a sharp look from Baron. What about hybrid systems? Baron interjected, stepping forward. We could integrate solar panels on the surface and use seawater turbines for additional power. Solar panels, another engineer scoffed. On a submarine? Why not? Baron shot back. It's not perfect, but it buys us more time underwater. Enough for real exploration. Elon stared at the blueprint, his fingers drumming against the table. What would it take to prototype it? Baron hesitated. Months, maybe. And there's no guarantee it'll work at the depths we're aiming for. There never is, Elon said. Do it. The room fell silent for a moment, the engineers exchanging uncertain glances. Then, one by one, they nodded, turning back to their workstations. Hours turned into days as the team worked in near-constant shifts, the lab a blur of activity. Elon was there for most of it, pacing between stations, offering suggestions, pushing for answers. His intensity was infectious, but it also began to wear on the team. Do you ever sleep? Baron asked one night, finding Elon hunched over a monitor, reviewing data. I'll sleep when it works, Elon replied without looking up. Baron sighed, pulling up a chair beside him. You can't brute force this, Elon. Sometimes progress takes time. Elon finally looked up, his eyes tired but sharp. Time is a luxury we don't have. The ocean's been here for billions of years, and we've barely scratched the surface. If we don't push now, when will we? Baron didn't have an answer. Instead, he leaned back, staring at the flickering blueprint on the screen. The flaw in the system was clear, but fixing it would take more than ingenuity, it would take resilience. Then let's push, Baron said finally, his voice steady. And so, they did. The ship drifted on the vast expanse of the Pacific, the water so dark it seemed to swallow the sky. The team stood on deck, faces illuminated by floodlights and the occasional flash of lightning on the horizon. Poseidon-1 was strapped to the crane, gleaming like a jewel under the harsh light. This trench, Elon said, pointing to a digital map displayed on a handheld tablet, is over 10,000 meters deep. We're going deeper than before, pushing the limits. Baron frowned, glancing at the submarine. The battery will struggle to get back if something goes wrong. We're cutting it close. Close is where breakthroughs happen, Elon replied, handing the tablet to an engineer. Moments later, the crane lowered Poseidon-1 into the water. The crew gathered in the control room, where a wall of screens displayed live feeds from the submarine's cameras. The sub dove steadily, passing through layers of shifting blue and into the deep, inky blackness of the ocean. The first sight of the ocean floor was breathtaking. Alien-like coral structures glowed faintly, their bioluminescence casting eerie shadows. A school of fish, translucent and shimmering, darted past the cameras. Battery at 60%, a technician announced. Elon leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the screen. Let's keep going. Another minute. The sub descended further, the terrain growing more rugged and surreal. A sharp crackle of static interrupted the feed for a moment before it resumed, showing a massive ridge that loomed in the darkness like a fortress. Battery at 40%, Baron warned. We need to surface. Not yet, Elon said, his voice calm but firm. The feed flickered again, and the battery warning alarm chimed, a high-pitched, insistent tone. The team tensed as the sub's thrusters turned upward, beginning its slow ascent. Come on, Baron muttered under his breath, watching the battery bar dip dangerously low. The sub emerged just as the battery reached critical levels, its sleek body breaking through the surface. The team erupted in cheers, but Baron's expression remained grim. We saw incredible things, Elon said, turning to Baron. But 5 minutes isn't enough. We need more time. Baron nodded. Then we have to think bigger. Back at Tesla headquarters, the glow of computer monitors cast a cold light over the lab. Engineers worked quietly, their focus intense. At the far end of the room, Elon sat alone, staring at a model of Poseidon-1. The room felt heavy, not with failure, but with the weight of uncertainty. Elon tapped the table rhythmically, his thoughts a torrent. He could see the ocean floor, the ridge, the glowing corals, but they were slipping away, unreachable in their brevity. Baron walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. He placed one in front of Elon and sat down. "You look like you've been here for days," Baron said. "I have," Elon replied without looking up. "The ocean isn't like space. It's unpredictable, alive. Every second down there feels like a fight. That's why it's worth it," Baron said, leaning back. "But you can't do it all at once." Elon finally looked at him, his eyes tired but resolute. "Do you ever wonder why we do this? Push like this?" "All the time," Baron said. "But I think you do it because you can't stand not knowing. You need to see what's out there." Elon nodded slowly. "I just keep thinking about what we missed down there. What we could have found if we'd had just 10 more minutes." Baron pulled out a blueprint he'd been working on. "Then maybe it's time we stop trying to make it work faster and start figuring out how to make it last longer." Elon studied the design, a prototype of Poseidon-2, with integrated solar panels and experimental seawater turbines. His lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "Let's build it," he said. Months later, the unveiling of Poseidon-2 was met with quiet anticipation. Sleeker and more advanced than its predecessor, the submarine glistened under the lights of the lab. The team gathered around as Baron presented the final design. "It's not perfect," Baron admitted, "but it's a leap forward. The solar panels will recharge on the surface, and the seawater turbines should extend the battery life significantly. We're looking at 20 minutes, minimum." Elon circled the sub, running his hand along its smooth surface. "It's a good start. But we won't know until we test it." The team ran simulations for days, each one more promising than the last. The hybrid power systems held up under pressure, the thrusters performed flawlessly, and the energy output was stable. But with every success came a new challenge. One day, an engineer approached Baron with a concerned look. "We're seeing interference at greater depths. Something's disrupting the communication link." Baron relayed the issue to Elon, who nodded thoughtfully. "I'll go," he said. The room fell silent. "You can't be serious," Baron said. "The risks." "I trust the sub," Elon interrupted. "And if something's down there causing interference, I want to see it myself." The decision was made, and a week later, Elon stood on the deck of the test ship once more, suited up and ready. The team watched as he climbed into Poseidon-2, the hatch sealing with a hiss. "Don't do anything reckless," Baron said through the comms, his voice steady but strained. Elon smirked. "When have I ever?" As the sub descended, the team watched the feed in tense silence. The battery levels held steady, and the hybrid systems performed as designed. The ocean floor came into view, brighter, clearer, and more vibrant than before. Then, as the sub ventured deeper, the interference began. Static crept into the feed, the visuals distorting slightly. Elon adjusted the controls, navigating toward the source of the disruption. The cameras captured something extraordinary, a massive underwater structure, natural but otherworldly. Steam billowed from cracks in the rock, glowing faintly in the darkness. "Geothermal vents," Elon whispered, his voice crackling over the comms. "This could be something big." The team on the ship erupted into chatter, but Elon's focus remained on the vents. He piloted the sub closer, watching as the energy readings spiked. Then, the battery warning chimed. "Time to surface," Baron said firmly. "Just a little longer," Elon replied, his voice calm but resolute. The warning chimed again, louder this time. Reluctantly, Elon turned the sub upward, beginning the long ascent. The interference grew stronger, the feed cutting in and out as the team waited anxiously. Finally, Poseidon-2 broke the surface, the sub gleaming in the sunlight. The team erupted in cheers, but Elon's expression was thoughtful as he climbed out. "We found something," he said, looking at Baron. "Something worth going back for." Baron nodded, a small smile breaking through his usual stoicism. "Then we'll make sure you can stay longer next time." The discovery of the geothermal vents sent ripples through the scientific community. Articles, papers, and headlines heralded Poseidon-2 as a groundbreaking achievement. But for Elon, the celebration was premature. The vents were just a glimpse of something deeper, something more profound waiting to be uncovered. On board the research ship, the team prepped Poseidon-2 for its next mission. This time, the goal wasn't just to observe but to collect samples and data that could change humanity's understanding of Earth's history. The upgrades were complete: improved turbines, enhanced communication systems, and a new fail-safe mechanism for extended underwater operations. Baron stood by the sub, watching as Elon suited up. "Are you sure about this? We've worked out most of the kinks, but at those depths, the ocean has a way of surprising you." "I'm sure," Elon said, fastening his helmet. "If we don't take risks, we'll never learn anything." The crew watched in silence as Elon climbed into Poseidon-2, the hatch sealing shut with a low hiss. The sub descended, its thrusters steady, cutting through the water like a blade. The control room buzzed with activity as the live feed displayed the alien world below, a landscape carved by pressure and time, untouched by human hands. As Poseidon-2 approached the geothermal vents, Elon activated the new sampling arm, watching as it collected fragments of rock and strange, gelatinous organisms. The vents pulsed with life, the glow from their fissures casting eerie shadows. The interference began again, faint at first, then growing stronger. The team in the control room exchanged worried glances. "Elon, the signal's getting weaker," Baron said through the comms. "Copy that," Elon replied. He adjusted the sub's trajectory, pushing deeper toward the source of the disruption. The feed flickered, but the camera captured something astonishing: a massive cavern yawning open beneath the vents, its walls shimmering with bioluminescent algae. Elon's voice crackled over the comms. "I'm going in." "Negative," Baron said sharply. "Batteries at 40%. We can't risk it." "I'll make it," Elon insisted, guiding the sub into the cavern. The walls glowed brighter as he ventured deeper, revealing ancient structures that looked almost deliberate, columns and arches carved by forces unknown. Then the feed cut out completely. The control room plunged into chaos. Technicians scrambled to re-establish the connection, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of urgency. Baron stood at the center, barking orders, his usual calm replaced with palpable tension. "Elon, do you copy?" he repeated into the comms, his voice tight. Static was the only reply. Minutes dragged into hours as the team worked tirelessly, scanning for any signal from Poseidon-2. The ocean, vast and impenetrable, offered no answers. Baron paced the room, his mind racing. He replayed every decision, every calculation, searching for the moment when things had gone wrong. "What if the interference wasn't natural?" a young engineer suggested hesitantly. Baron stopped, turning to face her. "What do you mean? What if there's something in that cavern, a magnetic field, a chemical reaction, something we didn't account for?" Baron nodded slowly, his mind piecing together the possibilities. "Then we need to figure out how to counteract it. Keep scanning." Hours later, a faint signal crackled through the speakers. It was distorted, barely intelligible, but it was enough. "Elon?" Baron said, leaning over the console. "Can you hear me?" The static cleared just enough for Elon's voice to come through, faint but steady. "I'm surfacing." Relief washed over the room as the team sprang into action, preparing for the sub's return. When Poseidon-2 broke the surface, battered but intact, the crew erupted into cheers. Elon emerged, his face pale but his eyes alight with something more than relief, wonder. "You won't believe what I saw," he said, gripping Baron's shoulder. "We have to go back." The images from the cavern spread like wildfire. The glowing walls, the strange formations, it was unlike anything seen before. Speculation ranged from geological phenomena to evidence of ancient life. But for Elon, it was more than a discovery. It was a beginning. Back at Tesla headquarters, the team worked around the clock, designing Poseidon-3. This time, the sub would be larger, more resilient, equipped with cutting-edge energy systems that could last for hours. Baron walked into Elon's office, where he was sketching ideas on a digital tablet. "We've got investors lining up for the next phase," Baron said. "And a dozen universities want to partner with us." Elon nodded, not looking up. "Good. We'll need them." Baron hesitated, then spoke. "What was down there, Elon? Really?" Elon paused, setting the tablet aside. It wasn't just the formations. It was the feeling. Like the ocean was alive, not just with life, but with history. Something we've barely begun to understand. Baron studied him for a moment, then smiled. "You really are impossible, you know that?" Elon grinned. "Impossible is where the fun starts." Weeks later, the ship set out again, carrying Poseidon-3 in a renewed sense of purpose. As the sub descended into the depths, Elon watched from the control room, his heart pounding with anticipation. This time, they weren't just exploring the ocean. They were stepping into the unknown, one dive, one discovery, one impossible dream at a time.